All right, let's get started. We will resume recipe lessons.
I guess everybody decided it was too cold.
Yeah, I guess
It's
so.
too icy or something.
So got a couple real life examples for you. So I've been telling you guys, the stuff we're talking about, people do all the time. So there was a Class A example about making good observations this week. You guys see the hashtag the dress?
Yes.
You guys see this?
Yes.
Do you guys see this? No?
Oh, yes. What's that?
So basically, when you go home, go on Google, type in the dress, and this new thing will come up. Basically, it was a picture of a dress from a wedding, and the lady that posted it put like, can someone tell me what color this dress is? Alright. And in some pictures, it looks blue and black, and in other pictures, it looks white and gold. It's the most bizarre thing ever. So it started this like huge internet sensation war about. So I'll let you guys look at it first before I tell you what color it really is. But that would be a good thing to look up.
Okay.
You got it. Hashtag the dress. That's it. So even in those pictures, you can tell one.
It's perception. I read a whole thing on it, and it's the way
Like your
eyes
eyes,
view
yeah.
and the lighting and.
No.
Okay. Anyway, I still
That'd be good to do some
understand how to
research
see
today.
different colors. I don't need them.
We got any prayer requests before we get started?
It's actually blue and black though.
Come on, Debbie. We got at least
Okay, she told us.
Dawn and Jen aren't here, but Eddie's had a really rough week.
Eddie.
Nancy. He's had a really rough week, and Dawn facing some tests that I took.
That's Dawn Mincy.
Uh-huh.
Still trying to learn my lesson.
And Tim Taylor, he goes here as Diane and Jerry Peeler's son-in-law. He went into the emergency room yesterday and he's got to go in for tests now.
What's going on?
Found something on his back.
With that.
Bladder.
Bladder. Speaking of bladder, Jerry Lackey goes for his scan Tuesday. They're checking to see if they see any cancer after all of his.
He just finished treatment. Or around
Back
of
at the
it.
end of the year,
Okay.
he did. Well, actually, they took him off of it before he was finished because it was killing him.
Yeah.
So, just pray.
Anything else? Alright, let's pray and we'll get started. Lord, we come to you this morning, thankful for the opportunity to gather together, and we thank you that you are sovereign over all things. You are all knowing, all wise, all good. We can trust you, even when we have friends who are facing illnesses. We pray specifically this morning for Eddie Mincy, Dawn, Tim Taylor, Jerry Lackey. We know that you are the God who created the human body, and you know the way it works, and that you can ultimately heal it if you would so choose. And so we pray that you would be a comfort to all the families and be with the physicians and give them just steady hands and clear minds on how to move forward with these three friends. And we pray this morning as we open up your word to study, pray that you would be with us, you would show us what you have for us this morning, and that you would teach us from your word. In Christ's name. Amen. All right. So we are on week 3 of interpretation. And we've been going through the 5 C's. So again, these are just kind of a helpful guideline to give some categories on when we're thinking through what kind of interpretations do we want to make. A few weeks ago, we talked about content and context. So we talked about finding out what the words or people or places, what those mean. Context, we talked about fitting our passage that we're studying in the kind of whole spectrum of the Bible, starting kind of with the immediate verses surrounding and kind of moving outward and trying to find out where it fits in the story of the Bible. Last week we talked about comparison. So we talked about using cross-references and other helpful sources to help us find out what else does the Bible say so that we can kind of put the puzzle together to to figure out what the Bible says about certain things. This week we're going to be talking about the last two. We're going to be talking about culture and consultation. And one of the reasons why we put these two together is that a lot of times when we're answering the question, what was the world like when this is written? A lot of times we use these three as well, but a lot of times consultation will help us out a lot when we're looking for these cultural aspects to the text that we're writing. And we're going to be talking about consultation. What do other trusted sources say about this? So first, let's start out with culture. So I Googled just like what's the definition of culture, and this is the definition. Culture is the arts, beliefs, customs, institutions, and other products of human work and thought considered as a unit, especially with regard to a particular time or social group. So when we're talking about looking at culture, we're wanting to figure out what was the world like when the text was written. So there's obviously a big difference between when the biblical texts were written and when our texts were written, or our local newspaper or what have you. The difference is when you read the local newspaper and you're reading about some apartment buildings that are going to be built in downtown Lincolnton, right? You know the culture of Lincolnton enough to know, oh, I know where that's at. I know what that means. I know what you do with that. Whereas with the Bible, we're talking about a completely different culture. So sometimes there will be words or situations that will seem completely foreign to you, and that's because they are. So one of the ways that we'll have to figure out what's going on is by considering the culture. Now, there's a couple different schools of thought when it comes to studying culture as the Bible that's in the Bible. Basically, the two are this. Some people will say that as long as you have the Bible, you have all the cultural references that you need. You don't really need to go above and beyond to find out what the culture was like. Some schools of thought would teach that. Others say that it's fine to reference other texts that were written around that time. It would be fine to look at some contemporary authors that maybe aren't biblical authors, but are kind of telling us what's going on at the time. To be honest with you, I see good parts of each argument, and so obviously we think the Bible has all that we need for life and godliness, so the Bible in itself has enough to help us understand the essential things we need to know. But also there can be some helpful tools that we can use to better understand the culture and give us a framework of what we're talking about. So if we're going to look, let's just go to the next slide. If we're going to look for cultural references, how do we find out more about the culture? Here are kind of three ways that, again, this will make more sense when we talk about consultation next. But if we're asking the question, how do we find out about the biblical culture? What was going on in the time? Now we got to know that, obviously we know the Bible was written over a span of thousands of years, right? So the culture in the Old Testament is not the same as the culture in the New Testament. So it takes some work to dig. But one of the things that's really helpful in terms of finding out about the culture is to read the whole Bible. Okay? This is important because as you read the Bible, especially when you read sections that are written in similar times, you read maybe the Gospels, and you kind of see some similar things, and it will help you pick up some cultural references. And then the whole Bible kind of gives us, again, it gives us the spectrum of what we're working with from Old Testament time to New Testament time. Secondly, consult the commentary. Now, we're going to be talking about commentaries in a minute when we talk about consultation. But there are some commentaries that are specifically designed to help give you cultural references. So I remember when I was in college, I took a New Testament class, and one of the textbooks that we had was a Bible background commentary. Basically just giving you, didn't really tell you anything about what the text meant, it just kind of told you what was going on during those times. So you can find that out. And also, godly people. So there are people who have devoted their lives to studying these time periods, studying the biblical text. And so as we study together, we can figure out more about cultural references. I think one of the things that you'll notice if you hear Clint preach consistently is that every now and then we'll get to something and he'll kind of explain what he's talking about. He'll kind of say, now, just to make sure you know what this is, what's going on is yada, yada, yada. Again, that's an instance where godly people who have studied the text for long periods of time can help us figure out about the culture. So what's the goal of finding out culture? Again, remember a few weeks ago we talked about context. We want to get down to the author's intended meaning, right, the original intended meaning. Well, a lot of times a cultural piece that we need to know can help us get the original meaning. So if we translate in our minds something that the Bible says into our culture, it can mean something a little different than what it meant to the original culture. So we want to zero down and get kind of the original cultural meaning. So again, this, out of all the 5 C's, I think this one might be the most difficult in terms of getting down to an exact meaning or exact understanding. Because think about it, if 2,000 years from now somebody says, all right, Kim, describe to me American culture from from year 2000 to year 2020. Right, it's going to be pretty difficult to describe all the kind of things about culture. And so again, we got to understand that we're just trying to use these cultural influences to help us understand better what's going on in the text we're reading. Does that make sense? Again, as we move on, we'll kind of see how there are some helpful ways to find this. So we want to find out about the culture. So we're down to our last C. All right, again, as we're talking about using those guidelines of the 5 C's. Consultation. All right, when we talk about consultation, this is when we take what we've learned or what we've studied and we compare our results or findings with other secondary sources. Okay, so this is when you would, again, this is when you're writing a paper in college and then you go to the library and check out a book to make sure your facts are right. Okay? We want to do this last. So this is, of all the interpretation techniques, this is the one you want to do last. Why do you think you would want to do this last?
So if you do it first, you won't take the time.
Okay, if you do it first, you won't take the time. That's good. So you can use it kind of as a crutch. Yeah.
You need to kind of dig in and see if you can figure out what's going on before you go let somebody else tell you.
Yep, that's good. That's good. So you can work and see and learn how to find stuff out on your own without just having someone tell you. That's good. Any other reasons why we think we might want to do this last?
It's just a validation.
Okay, so it's just a validation. So it's more of to make sure that you're not going way off. What I like to say is we want to do consultation last because we want to use consultation skills to supplement our study. Okay, so we want our consultation techniques to just kind of come alongside us as we study, instead of being our foundation for study. And there's a couple reasons why I would say we want to do this. One, so let's say you want to study a chapter in Matthew. So you go to Lifeway and you just grab a book. I'm not saying there are bad books at Lifeway, but you just grab a book. And let's just say that the book that you grab is from a teacher that is kind of accepted as not a very good teacher. Okay, and you go there and you start reading his book, and all of a sudden you think, oh yeah, I can see where that would make sense. Well, if you're doing a consultation as your primary form of study, you can be led into some false teaching pretty quickly. All right, so it prevents you from falling into false teachers. And then also, I think a couple of you mentioned it, it helps you grow in your Bible study skills. Okay, so I know talking to Clint, as he's preparing sermons kind of for the last couple of years on a regular basis, he's telling me as he continues to prepare for sermons, he uses his commentaries less and less because he feels like he gets a better understanding of the Bible, and especially when you work through books of the Bible, you get a better understanding of those things. So your Bible study skills can grow as well. So that's why we wanted to do that last. Again, we're not talking that you have to do it last. If you get to something and you need some help really quickly, then that's fine. But as a general rule, we don't want to let our consultation techniques take over our Bible study. We want our Bible study to be the focus, and then our consultation techniques to help us out. So the first kind of consultation, again, it helps prevent us from false teachers and helps us grow in our Bible study. So the first kind of technique or tool we want to use for consultation is a commentary. So what is a commentary? Commentary is a set of explanatory or critical notes on text. So as you go to Lifeway, usually back left corner, you see rows of books that all look the same. They're really big, long sections. Those are the commentaries, right? So those are where people have studied and have kind of written out their notes in a systematic way, put them in a book, and there you go, you got a commentary. Commentaries are best used as guardrails. Okay, what do I mean by that? Okay, so you're walking over a bridge, right? And your commentaries, or what keeps you from falling off into the river, are the guardrails. Right? Commentaries are the same way. As we're studying our Bible, again, this goes back to what we were just talking about. As we're studying, we want to make sure that we're not falling off into some dangerous false teaching. So the commentaries can help us do that. So we don't want to just trust on commentaries because we can be led into false teaching from commentaries. But we also don't want to never use any kind of other outside source, because if we don't, that's where you get the guys who kind of go out in a cabin in the middle of the wilderness and emerge knowing the day when Christ is coming back. So they read it, they found it. No, we use commentaries as guardrails. Does that make sense? These commentaries are going to help us fall off the cliff of heresy. Okay? We don't want to fall off that cliff, so we can help us do that using commentaries. So how do you find a good commentary? Okay, so if you go to Lifeway, again, there's not just one long section of these are the right commentaries. There's a million books in there that you can try to find. So how do you find a good commentary? Well, first off, you want to make sure that the commentary you use is from a trusted author with a good reputation for sound doctrine. Okay? So don't go get some, loony's commentary that he's kind of, again, the guy comes out from the woods and all of a sudden he's got the next best commentary. Right? We want to get a trusted author, so one that would be, has a reputation for good doctrine, is basically what I'm saying. Again, you can find that out by asking some people around you, or, again, finding someone with a good reputation for sound doctrine. Secondly, when you're looking at a commentary, you want to make sure that the commentary that you get is on a proper skill level. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't mean that, if you're not comfortable, obviously you should go get the weak sauce, commentary. No. What I mean is there are different commentaries that are used for different purposes. So some of them are more technical, some of them are more literary, some of them are more devotional. There are different kinds of commentaries that you can use. So if you are looking to read through your Bible in a year, okay, and you want to get a commentary that's going to help you do that, you don't want a commentary that's going to be taking all the Greek words down to the, I don't know what even the parts of Greek words are, but you don't want to be getting a commentary that's going to be 8,000 pages where you're never going to get to it. No, you probably want a smaller commentary that's going to be more devotional, that's going to help you get the ideas. Or if you're studying a book, say like Romans, where in Romans, as you read each verse, you can almost preach a sermon on each verse because there's so much theological emphasis in every verse. So when you're getting a commentary on Romans, you might want to get a commentary that breaks it down verse by verse, so that as you study a verse at a time, you can figure that stuff out. Whereas when we talk about the Old Testament, if you're going to read through the Old Testament, you might just want to survey commentary. So on the proper skill level. And then, again, find a commentary that fulfills the right purpose. So you should take a good teacher with a good skill level, and that should figure out what purpose you want and find a commentary that fits that. Any questions on commentary before I move forward? Now, I purposely did not pump certain commentaries because I don't want to do that. So, again, we pick commentaries based on our community, and again, that's the way you can help find a good one. Also, if you trust someone in the church, you say, oh, they have good doctrine, they've helped me learn the Bible a lot. They're probably somebody you can ask to help find a commentary. And again, I have commentaries that I prefer, that I use, but again, there's lots of good commentaries out there that we can find. So no questions on commentaries? Okay. Our next consultation tool is a study Bible. Okay, how many of you, anybody in here have a study Bible? Okay, that's a lot of people. So what's a study Bible? A study Bible is a copy of the Bible that also has study notes in it. Right? Pretty simple. The good thing about study Bibles, are that study Bibles can help us kind of in all the aspects of interpretation that we've already talked about. Okay, so many study Bibles will describe words or people in the notes. So for some of you who are reading through the Old Testament, okay, you could, when you get to something you don't know, use a cross-reference and bounce around. Study Bible would be helpful because study Bibles at the bottom will say, so-and-so was a and they did this and this and this, and it'll give you the references, but it'll kind of put it in a compact section. It can help you with context. So one of the things that I love about the study Bible that I have is that it has book outlines, and it'll kind of give you the themes of the book, so that if you read the overview of the themes and you kind of get your mind around what the whole book is like, it can help you with context. Some study Bibles have whole Testament outlines, so the New Testament, Old Testament, so it can help you with context. Right, all study Bibles, I should just put all study Bibles. All study Bibles are going to have cross-references, they're going to have concordances, help us find our comparison techniques from last time. Also, one of the things I like about the study Bible I use is that a lot of study Bibles will have a cultural note as it comes up. So you're reading about the temple in the Old Testament, and it'll kind of break out a page about this is what the temple was, this is kind of how it was set up, where it was, and it can help us figure out more about the culture as well. So again, the study Bible is very helpful. Again, we're very lucky in America that we have access to Bibles really easily. Right? We talked about that week one, that we should study the Bible because we have them. We're very lucky because we have access to study Bibles in our language, that we can actually sit down and study. Now, I have a Bible that I use for reading that's different than the Bible that I use for study. Okay, so I'm not saying you have to have a study Bible to be able to read the Bible, but a study Bible is helpful in terms of being able to consult other authors. Now, the same rules apply to study Bibles that apply to commentaries. So you want to make sure that you don't get a wacko's study Bible, for lack of a better term. You want to get a good study Bible, a trusted study Bible. And again, the majority of translations will have kind of their go-to study Bible that if you use the NIV or the ESV or the whatever translation you use, they'll have a study Bible that's kind of generally accepted by the people who use the translation. So again, don't go, buy a study Bible out of the back of some guy's trunk in the parking lot. You want to make sure you get a good study Bible, and also you want to make sure that you get a study Bible that will help you in what you're looking for. So again, you don't want to get a massive, huge study Bible if you're trying to read through. You just need some study notes as well. Make sense? Any questions on study Bibles? I know this is pretty simple. A lot of people already have study Bibles. But for those who don't, here's study Bibles. So, this is just my opinion. So, in my humble opinion, if you can only buy one tool to help you study the Bible, I would choose a study Bible. So, a commentary is great to have. There's a lot of other things that you can use to help study the Bible. But if you only can get one, and you need one that's not astronomically priced, a study Bible is the one I would go for. And the reason is because it helps us holistically study the Bible. It gives us reference points on kind of all the things that we need to know about the Bible. And it allows us, you can use it to read through your Bible, you can use it to study in depth. There's a lot of different things you can use a study Bible for. Study Bibles are kind of the Swiss Army knife of Bible study, so to speak. Have a lot of everything, but not too much of anything, if that makes sense. All right. Questions? Nope. All right. And lastly, okay, this is the last consultation tool is godly people. So Christ has given us given leaders to help us grow to maturity of faith and unity in the knowledge of God. Ephesians 4, and we are commanded to teach one another in Colossians 3. So one of the big reasons why here at Freedom we're so passionate about church membership is that when you join the church, you join the body of believers who commit together to grow and to learn about the Bible. Okay, so we committed together to help grow in godliness. We're committed to help teach one another, exhort one another, to help grow together. And so when we do Bible study, we want to make sure that we take advantage of that. Right? So the church is a gift from Christ to us to help us understand more about more about God and more about God through His Word. So, again, godly people, that's what we want to do. Again, I would say that it shouldn't be unusual for us as church members at Freedom, but also part of the church, Universal Church. It should be unusual for us to have conversations about the Bible. Okay, so we shouldn't have to keep our Bible study kind of locked away in our office. And then when we go to dinner at somebody's house, not talk about the Bible. Right? No, that's one of the best times to talk about the Bible when you're just in conversation with people. So we want to make sure that we make a point to have conversations with other people about the Bible. Does that make sense? Okay. Again, I think one of the dangerous things about one of the dangerous things about growing up in the Bible Belt is that we've kind of compartmentalized church sometimes. So we say all the spiritual stuff we do at the church building. And then when we go to our house and our jobs, that's not spiritual at all. Well, that's not the case, right? Your relationship with Christ is going to affect every area of your life. And so the more that you have conversations with other people, the better you can understand the Bible. Now again, all this falls under the umbrella of don't go ask some rando guy that you know nothing about what he thinks about the Bible. Okay? There's a lot of people who have bad thoughts about the Bible, which is why, again, consultation should be done last. Okay? Because there are plenty of heretics in the world. And apart from God's grace, I would be one of those. Apart from God's grace, we would be one of those. And so we want to make sure that we're working together to make sure that we get the information about the Bible and our understanding of the Bible right. Another reason why consulting with godly people is important is, again, I think Christ says, go make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and then what? And teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. Okay, well, where do we find out all that He's commanded us? The Bible. So, the fundamental core of discipleship is that we make disciples by teaching, baptizing. So, discipleship, in terms of how we learn about God, is you don't have to say like, okay, we're going to meet 7 o'clock and we're going to do a Bible study. And if we're doing that, we're doing discipleship. No, discipleship is organic. It can happen in many different ways. And part of the ways that discipleship happens is just having simple conversations about the Bible. So I like Clint's use of Mark Dever's definition of discipleship, I think it says, where it's gathered together to do one another spiritual good. Well, some of the best spiritual good you can do for other people is helping them understand the Bible. And so if you have conversations about it, we can use our Bible study as the foundations for our discipleship. So we're studying ourselves, and then we are helping teach other people, and we're teaching each other together, and it becomes this kind of organic growth together. Does that make sense? That's my last slide. So I purposely left this lesson short because I know we've just finished up an entire segment on interpretation. So one, I wanted to kind of wrap it up and kind of give us a whole view of where we started and where we're going. But first, I want to make sure we have room for any questions from anything we've talked about the entire time. And I've left 10 minutes because last time I said, do you have any questions? And it was 9:59. So feel free to ask your questions today.
This is just kind of an observation you were talking about, knowing the scriptures and discussing things. And my son yesterday, when I was down at his house, and I was just, as a mother, he was saying that somebody at work said, why do y'all want to preach on the Old Testament? The Old Testament's dead. We're in the New Testament. And he said, are you going to take your history book and say, we're cutting this off here? Because, well, no, that's history. He said, well, what do you think the Old Testament is? And then he said, somebody said, well, homosexuality, that's an Old Testament. New Testament doesn't teach against it. He looked around and he said, have you read the book of Romans? And said and I said, I thought, you know what? He's studied it. And I'll have to say, as a mother, it was a good feeling to me to know that he was having these discussions. And he said, the person said, he looked around at somebody and he said, it's amazing how the truth shuts people up, isn't it?
Yeah, again, so we're talking about interpretation, giving context, right? And so, again, this is where Clint's mentioned this before, so I wouldn't mention it if we had before. But I'm all for getting the Bible out to people or getting New Testaments out to people. The problem is, you hand somebody a New Testament, one of those little pocket New Testaments. So yeah, I'm not saying that's bad. You hand them a New Testament and they don't have the Old Testament. I mean, what do you do with? You've heard it said. You shut da 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 da. What do you do with that if you don't have it? So again, we know the Old Testament. All of it points to kind of the apex of the story of the Bible is the cross. So the Old Testament, now it is history, but it's also this kind of snowball that's coming up to say, wait a minute, when Jesus gets here in Matthew 1 and goes through all these genealogies, but oh, that's that guy. You know what I mean? And then the New Testament is just pointing back to it, saying this is how we should interpret that. So we have to, that's encouraging to know that there are still people who think the Old Testament is relevant. Which again goes back to what we were talking about earlier with culture, is that I think sometimes because it's so culturally different than what we're reading, we just think, oh, well, it's not cool. I don't have to really worry about it. I remember I sent Michael White a text a few weeks ago. I said, Michael, I'm reading through the Old Testament, and the world just seems so much different back then. Like, is it bad that I get kind of concerned sometimes when the world doesn't look the same as mine? But part of that is that you got to understand the culture. You got to know that there are differences. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, criticisms, complaints, points of order?
You talk about culture, and you take Old Testament, New Testament, and today. So I think what we're encountering today is that same mindset that the Old Testament was then, the New Testament was then, today is today. And so that I think that's why we have so many controversies coming up about what is biblically based, whether it's homosexuality, alcohol abuse, or anything of that nature. Being able to compare and contrast each one of those segments, does that mean that we write a new Bible?
Right.
No. It just means that we have a more in-depth understanding of what's transpired. I know back when I was active duty, I was fortunate enough to travel to the Middle East. And you compare what I experienced in Jordan to what I experienced in Oman. The cultural differences just between those two, but they're still Middle Eastern countries. Mm-hmm. So then trying to apply it to today, there's a lot it requires you to think about what the current context and culture was at that time.
Right.
So, yeah.
And we're going to talk about that more when we get to application. So, perfect example here. Again, a lot of times we do this without even knowing it, but we start out by saying, okay, should I go watch this movie? All right, new movie coming out, should I go watch it? And we start with the application point. Well, the Bible is not going to tell you anything specifically about going to the movie theater to watch a movie. It is going to teach you about fleeing from sexual immorality. Okay? And so those kind of things you have to, when we go to make applications again, that's when we go from what did it mean in the culture that it was written at that time to what does it mean to us now, then to how do we apply it. If you work backwards, then you start making the Bible say a lot of things that it doesn't say to justify doing what you want to do. So I think that's a good point that we gotta, when we talk about culture, we've got to know, since we know our cultures are different, we got to figure out how to translate those differences. Right? So when Jesus said, or when no temptation is overtaken is not common to man, God is faithful, right? Well, the temptation for a college freshman to, pull up a shady website on their computer, right? The Bible teaches that temptation, one, is common to man, but that Christ has experienced temptation in the same way. Well, no, Christ didn't have his MacBook out, where he had to be tempted not to look at a certain website. No, but that kind of temptation. So we have to figure out how do we translate back and forth. So that's good. Any other questions? So let's kind of wrap up where we've been with interpretation, because in the next few weeks, we're not going to jump into application directly next week. Next week we're going to be talking about genres, interpreting different genres. Right, so we'll probably break that up into 2 weeks. I think it'll be too much to do, but again, we're building this curriculum as we go. So far, where we've gotten on interpretation is that if the big things, you don't remember anything else about interpretation so far. One, we want to find out what the text originally meant, okay? What it meant by its intended author to its intended audience. That's massive, because that is kind of the framework for proper interpretation, is making sure we understand what it originally meant. We decorated our interpretation with all these other tools, but the foundation, the structure that we need is making sure that we understand the proper meaning to the intended audience. And secondly, right, the second thing we want to make sure we do is that we use the Bible to give us our primary interpretations of the Bible. Okay? So, if the Bible says something else about the verse we're reading, that takes priority over what I think about the verse we're reading. Does that make sense? Right? So, just because you don't like something a verse says, doesn't mean you can make up something. You know, if the rest of the Bible says it's true, whether you like it or not. Okay? I don't know if you guys have had that experience of reading some of these. I don't like it. I don't like what it says. Probably because it's telling me how sinful I am. But in those things, we want to make sure we interpret the Bible. Thirdly, we want to do this in community. That's a big part of what I probably left out from today. That we want to make sure we do this in community, because that's the kind of network God has given us to help us grow. The church is the web on which we can bounce around and get ideas and make sure that we're staying on track. So those are kind of the 3 big things. And we use these, again, the 5 C's, again, all those are just guidelines to give us categories for thinking about what we're doing. So, one of the things I've been meaning to do that I should have done in week 1 is what we're going to do in the next few coming weeks. And again, this is like, don't feel guilted into going to study your Bible. But I am going to ask at the beginning if we've done anything, if you've used any of these techniques that have been helpful or anything like that moving forward. So as you're doing your Bible study, if you're doing something you think, oh, I remember we were talking about culture this week, and I found a cool cultural reference as I was reading this week. Just jot it down and we'll talk about it. Because again, I think one of the difficult parts of, so when somebody went through this kind of Bible study training with me, one of the cool things was that I went to the training, and then I hung out with those same people all week, and we were kind of studying the Bible together, and we were in the same place. So we got to see each other doing it, whereas for us, it's kind of like we scatter and we go our different directions, so we don't get to see each other use it. One of the most helpful things when I was learning how to study the Bible is that I saw other people doing it, and so when we made mistakes, we made them together, and when we did things well, we did them together, so we kind of figured it out. So I want to kind of cultivate that in here, that we're kind of encouraging each other or asking questions of stuff that we find. So like that. That make sense? All right, it's 9:58. You got 2 minutes. Any questions? Oh, 9:59. All right, well, I'm afraid. Sorry. No more questions. I'm just kidding. So, again, next week, in the next coming weeks, we're going to be talking about genres. So, how do we interpret Leviticus differently than we interpret Hebrews, so to speak? How do we interpret Malachi differently than we interpret Matthew? Those kind of things are what we're going to be talking about the next few weeks. So let's pray, and we'll go down for worship. Lord, we thank you for your word. We thank you that you have spoken to us in a way that we can understand. You've spoken to us in a way that we can study, that we don't have to wait for you to write a message in the cloud to us, but you've actually spoken to us, and we have your very words. And I pray that as we go to interpret your word, you would keep us from evil, you would deliver us from false teaching, that you would allow us to study rightly, allow us to make proper interpretations, and that you would give us an idea of what is sound doctrine, so that as we go to make applications from your text, from your word, we make applications to our lives, that we make them rightly, because we've got a right understanding of what you have said to us. So I just pray you would help us, that we know that, again, as we spoke about a few weeks ago, we know that unless you open our eyes to what the scriptures say, we won't be able to understand it. It'll just be words on a page, unless you give us insight. So we just pray you would help us do that. Pray for our pastor this morning as he comes to deliver the word to us. Thank you for a pastor who you have graciously allowed to be committed to good teaching. We thank you for that. We know that's a gift that not everyone has. So we just pray, would you be with him this morning? Would you strengthen him? Would you give him insight from your word and help him to deliver the message in a way that would penetrate our hearts and that would lead to proper applications in our lives. So we thank you for your word again. We pray that you